The primary motivation I have for doing OD work and being around is to give something back to the community. So I started my life professionally by having a consulting firm that does OD internationally. And then 2005, we set up a non-profit organization to teach OD and to bring OD practices and experiences to communities and to non-profit and disadvantaged groups. So I'm doing both by having the financial aspect of the consulting and plowing back to the community. So that's the excitement I have, to give back to the community.
Topics and talks about changes that are going on, for example, in this conference, do they apply to your community, to your country as well? So do you have the same experience, or do you think it's different in different parts of the world?
No, they are not different. What we call in our language the postmodern society in Ghana or in Africa, it's not very different from what we experience in Europe and America, Australia. And there's a merging of cultures in a very powerful way, that the approaches we experience in OD and in organizations are applicable. For example, more and more young people are setting up non-conventional organizations with structures very different from what I knew growing up. So they have all kinds of cooperative arrangements with very little hierarchy and a lot of volunteerism. People bring in their competence and they link up without necessarily looking at the hierarchy and the bottom line. So a lot of things are going on which are not focusing on profit per se, but impact beyond what their little circles. So I see the same thing happening. And yet, at the same time, you find that the traditions are holding. There are organizations are getting bigger and getting a little more structured. So the balance is there, just as we experience in Europe and in the US. Same things are going on.
I was talking to some of somebody from OD in the United States, and she said that she thinks that that there is so much to learn, for example, from the African countries, where communities are much stronger and probably the traditions are living much more than in the US or in some of the countries of Europe. What do you think of that?
Well, the we spirit as compared to the I spirit or the me spirit is still there. The sense of community as the unit rather than the individual is still there. Even in urbanizing setups like the capitals and the big cities, yet you still have the individual coming up, primarily in the new generations. And strangely, in some of the old leaders, you find a very strong presence of a strong man, African leader. It's still there, very traditional, and yet he's continuing to be there, dependent on what the community does. So I wouldn't take one in favor of the other. It's a shifting and a balancing of the I and the we. More a tilt to the I these days than when I was growing up. It was a we. I didn't have an identity. My identity was my identity of the family. But today I have an identity very different from the identity of my family, even though I'm not a young man. So the dynamics are there in Africa, and I think OD, especially the Gestalt approach, enables us to intervene at these different levels of the system, the individual, the small group, the large community. And strangely, things like future search and open space, these large, and America Speaks, these large level interventions are becoming part of the political agenda in Africa these days, where they call the town meetings or what they call the outreach, where the governed or the people in the community's voices are picked up. We just were part of a constitutional review in Ghana, and it did the same thing. You call the town hall meetings, and the farm laborers and the peasant women are making contributions to constitutional reform, which didn't exist years back.
Is it something that the people take easily, that they are asked about those questions, or is it something that is extraordinary for them?
You get the impression this has been a long-standing demand that has never been met, that suddenly the door is open. So there's a flood of ideas coming from the ground to challenge the former elitist governing system. It's really scary for those who haven't got the ability to think on their feet and to be innovative in their rulership. They feel very challenged, especially the power of the emerging educated women. So recently we had a bill on domestic violence, which came from the ground up. It was actually drafted by the NGO society, the informal sector, the non-state actors, drafted the bill and took it to Parliament. And the MPs had no choice. So these are some of the emerging things that make OD in Africa very exciting. And I think it's going to be more. There's a growing demand of OD competencies and OD approaches to how we do ourselves as a people. This is part of the motivation why we are onto a campaign to bring more OD practices into Africa.
And how did you meet Gestalt? Because I saw that you were leading a masterclass on Gestalt.
Yes, I did. Well, it's about 17 years ago. We were busy doing I didn't start from Gestalt. I started as a development practitioner, and we're teaching African and Asian project managers about project management. Then it dawned on us that after a number of years, a lot of the project management concepts, tools, instruments were available, but not much impact. So we did a review and recognized what we were leaving out was the human factor, the people management component. And that's the motivation. So we called in a Gestalt practitioner to supervise our work. And then we all went into the Gestalt training. Well, I then got invited to be an intern with the faculty and slowly became a faculty member. And now we have mounted the Gestalt OSD program in Ghana. And we've done 3 programs, 16 months each. So currently, we are on to the process of sending into the system the 90th number of Gestalt OD practitioners. We want to grow the ground before we hit, because people need to know what this body of knowledge brings, especially the idea of embracing difference and working with multiple realities. All the conflicts in Africa is because people think their worldview should be the worldview. And this Gestalt approach of embracing the unknown, embracing the difference, and celebrating, because diversity is the way the world is. So I think it is time, and we need to send this out there. I got hooked into Gestalt OSD, and I'm spreading the news. So if you like, I've become like an apostle of Gestalt approach to organization, because it enables you to work with the individual as a leader, with groups and organizations, with communities, and with a big system like the whole country. One of the things that in recent times we've begun to enjoy and expand is handling multi-stakeholder dialogue platforms, where the civil society, the government, and the private sector engage on common development themes and bring in their strengths. See, Gestalt has a way of harnessing energy around common ground, and that's what we're doing, to see that we have a common agenda. Basic things are humanity and our drive to be of use and of help to others.